All right, welcome to Happy Hour Holidaze. I'm your host every single week, Manny Fresh. We got our co-host Sean Febre, and in studio today, we got a little taste of culinary delight. We got Chef David Reyes in the building today. He's going to kind of give us the state of Tampa and how, actually Tampa Bay, St. Pete included, Clearwater, all over the place here, how we're starting to become a really kind of foodie city here.
Yeah.
And, just tell us a little bit about.
Well, before we get into that, you brought something today.
I did. So I'm at the St. Pete Distillery, the chef there, and it's very exciting to be there because they have a lot of projects brewing.
Pun intended.
Distilling, actually. And one of the projects they've just released is an agave spirit. Technically a tequila. We can't call it tequila if it's not made in Tequila, Mexico, right? But the agave is from Mexico. It was matured in barrels for 4 years. That would make it a super añejo. It's delicious.
Oh,
yeah.
Let's get a taste.
Wait. That's interesting though, David. That you can't call a tequila unless it's from Mexico, right?
Made in Tequila, Mexico.
More specifically, Tequila, Mexico, which is in Jalisco. And there's a lot of agave in that area, and
all right,
specifically blue agave, which that's what this is.
Damn, that smells good, man.
So barrel aged in whiskey barrels.
What is that one called?
So this is called our agave spirit, basically.
Doesn't have like a particular name.
Doesn't have a particular name. It's very anticipated. I've been tasting this for the last 3 years. Since I started visiting the distillery, and it was fun to go back, in the barrel warehouse and have Warren, the master distiller, kind of pull out a sample, and we taste it. I'm like, man, this is good now. Like, what are we waiting for? And then 3 years later, it's even better. And I think they did a great job. As an agave spirit, there's actually other agave spirits in Mexico, because they can't call it tequila there too. And when you compare them. And I'm a huge tequila fan. I think I have more tequilas in my bar at home than anything else. And comparatively, this holds its own. This brings a very interesting level of just slight peatiness, and there's this sweetness from the agave still. But it's so interesting, and it makes a hell of a margarita.
I can tell you this: it's very smooth.
It is,
and this is what you call a reposado, right?
This is a super añejo, which is basically the criteria for an añejo is 3 years in a barrel. This is 4, so it's a super añejo.
Does it get the color from the barrel then?
It does, yeah, from the maturing process in smoked whiskey barrels. So if I get any facts wrong, the master distiller will just kick me in.
So essentially, those barrels had whiskey in them.
Yeah.
And now.
So they imparted a little bit of flavor. And
that's where the peatiness comes from.
Well, yes, the peatiness, I think, comes from more of the charring of the barrel that gives it that slight smoke. But, as you can see, it's subtle. It's not pungent. I've had some agave spirits that are more like mezcals. Mezcal, the signature flavor note is tires, taste like what a tire would taste like. A good mezcal is smoky and it just reminds you of a tire.
A nice Michelin tire.
A Michelin, yeah.
Talking about Michelin
Goodyear.
stars.
Yeah. So I joined the St. Pete Distillery. They have ambitious plans to, we have the trail garden. That has food and drinks, and it's a total vibe. It's in South St. Pete, not too far from the Tropicana.
So is it off Central or?
It's just off Central, 31st, between 28th and 31st.
Okay.
Just south of Central, a few blocks. So pretty easy to find. It's right off the expressway. We will be doing distillery tours towards the end of the year. We're rebuilding that whole area to welcome people in and start the tour and end the tour in. It's going to be pretty impressive. I mean, it's impressive as it sits now, but it's having some major upgrades. And then in a few years, we'll start building brick and mortar restaurants that'll have a very big draw. Restaurants that I don't see exist here yet. With concepts that don't exist here yet.
So what's the story behind David Reyes? How did you get into the culinary world and now the distillery world? But you are creating a menu for that distillery, I'm
Yes,
assuming.
yes.
How did you get in there? I mean, was it something that you've done since childhood? You just love cooking? And I do get a hint of Spanish accent. So what country, were you born in the U.S. or were you born somewhere else?
I was born and raised in Chicago, and I grew up in the restaurant business. You know, my grandfather had 3 restaurants growing up. My parents worked in those restaurants. You know, I often, like, the earliest memories of being in the restaurant was, you know, leaving kindergarten and going to one of the restaurants to wait for my mother to finish working, or, you know, just being in and around food was very natural. And growing up in a inner city Chicago, I grew up in what I didn't realize until I left, a very tumultuous neighborhood back in the 80s. You know, Humboldt Park was rough, you know, so I spent a lot of time inside, and, you know, my mother cooked 99% of the meals we ate. You know, we really didn't eat out much unless it was somebody's birthday or somebody got good grades, which that didn't include me. You know, so, you know, looking back, I spent a lot of time around food, with food. And
what kind of food?
Mexican food, Spanish food, Puerto Rican food. My goodness. The neighborhood I grew up in was very Puerto Rican. You know, both my parents are Mexican descent. I have lineage in Spanish culture. And, you know, to me, it was, but yet the neighborhoods around us also had its own influence. Like, I had a healthy helping of Polish food when I was growing up, and Ukrainian food.
Polish food. Yeah, man, I'll take Polish food too all day.
Give me some pierogies, pierogies, sour cream and bacon.
Oh man, there's a place called
pierogies. Take me to the shitter, man.
But there's a place called Europa, and it's like, man, they do Polish, like really good Polish food. It's got like this beet salad that's really good. It's like little strains of beet. I mean, I love it. I mean, but I'm a food person, you know.
It's hearty, man. Some of the soups. I just love it, you know, and so we were lucky enough to have a Chinatown in Chicago. That's you know, you go there and the menu isn't even in English. You know, you always know you're at a good restaurant when you look around. You're the only non-Asian person in the restaurant. And the menu's not in English. You just, all right, you take your chance, you point, and it's usually going to be really, really good, right? So, you know, I had a good upbringing in terms of the diversity of the kinds of food I ate and having my hands in food. So after high school, I did a short stint in the military. And
thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
I got paid. Thank you.
I got paid. I did get some benefits, dude. You know, it wasn't completely.
But after that, I kind of did the only thing I saw myself ever doing was cooking. And I went to culinary school, and I met my wife there. I had a really interesting start. Having my experience in the restaurant world and having been in the military really prepared me to excel quickly in culinary school and take advantage of situations that I was put in and opportunities that I was given. You know, I did an exchange in France, which,
nice.
You know, just God, I had to go back. So I went back and worked in France, and
so you're trained in like traditional French cuisine?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to land in 2-star Michelins twice. So, you know, living in London for a little bit, you know, traveling throughout the south of France into Spain and Italy and experiencing food on a different level. You know, it was a very unique upbringing, you know, in the culinary world. And then, you know, came back to finish school and took a second internship in Mexico. And I ended up staying in Mexico to work. And that was a very diverse experience. You know, so then after culinary school, I took on some really big projects that led me to Louisiana, southern Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans.
Which is somewhat French cooking, isn't it?
There is a heavy French influence.
It's like Haiti is like influencing Louisiana, and then Haiti's influenced by France, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look at the history of the Americas, you know, the influence coming from the East through Haiti and you know, picking up influence from there and down from Canada, from the French, you're looking at some of the oldest parts of America there, and there's still a very heavy French influence, but it's an old French influence. It's what France was hundreds of years ago, and even the French that's spoken there, the Creole French, it's much slower. It's easy to understand sometimes, and because I was lucky enough to kind of make my way into the bayous and meet people that were very, very interesting.
And learn Cajun cooking there too, right?
Cajun cooking, man. The stories I have about learning Cajun cooking in Southern Louisiana and not in New Orleans. This is outside in the Atchafalaya River Basin and going into small towns and meeting people and having cooks from that area come work. I literally learned how to make gumbo from this lady that had worked where I went to establish a new restaurant, and she had been there for her whole life, really. Wow. And I asked her for a recipe for her gumbo. I don't have one. I said, okay, well, can I follow you around? And I'd literally have her put ingredients by hand, by feel, into a pot, and I'd have to hold something to then measure it and then put it back in put it in the pot. And literally we did this for days, learning how to make her gumbo, and she imparted a lot of knowledge, but it's something that she passed on just by practice. You have to cook with her in order to learn these things. There's no recipe.
Wow.
And so that I'll never forget that. I still use techniques and theory that I learned there in everything I do. And then after that, since I had a very diverse kind of start to my culinary career, it put me in pretty interesting positions. I segue, I don't know, 5-6 years later, I joined a group as a concept chef, which then led to a corporate chef position. And
what's a concept chef?
Creating new concepts.
Okay.
I had
exploring.
Going into
experimenting,
new markets and craft. Cutting. Basically, I'd sit at a table with a bunch of really high-end professionals, and we'd put together concepts that we'd want to install in different cities throughout the country. And that really fast-forwarded a lot of my, culinary knowledge. You learn a lot when you open a restaurant. And I, at one point, opened 11 in 1 year. It was one after the other, after the other, after the other. It was like, you'd kind of go back to a restaurant that you had started 3 months ago just to see how it was doing, and then go to a next one. And it was like leapfrogging for a few months. I think I spent most of that year on the road.
Was it like the same menu or?
No, there were 3 different concepts for that particular year. 4 different concepts, actually. Some of them were similar, but you had a Mexican concept. I had a burger concept. We had a high-end steakhouse. So it was pretty diverse. And I kept pretty busy, was learning a lot and, grinding my teeth, so to speak. So coming off that, I tried my hand at my own restaurant group after being with that corporate company for quite a number of years. My wife and I opened our own restaurant in Chicago, and we were grossly underfunded and, very ambitious, and continued to learn a lot and, made it through our first leg of our lease and decided, well, this isn't going to work. It was just, it was a good lesson, but, we went on to do, then I came to Tampa, actually.
How long ago did you come to Tampa?
4 years ago now.
4 years ago?
Yeah. 4 years ago, a friend that I met in that corporate company had an idea to do a ghost kitchen. And he was talking to me about it, and this was...
What's a ghost kitchen?
Ghost kitchen is basically online. You look like many different restaurants, but it's one kitchen with many different menus.
Oh,
and we had in one kitchen, we had a chicken concept, a burger concept, a sandwich concept, and a rotisserie chicken concept. Online, they all had different names. So you'd think, these are all different kind of restaurants, but they were all coming out of the same kitchen. Now get this. He was talking to me in 2019, early 2019, and I decided by the end of 2019 that I was going to go ahead and come down to Tampa and do this. Wouldn't you know that it was a perfect time to have a delivery-only restaurant?
Yeah, that's right. Because nobody was eating out.
Nobody was eating out. We fit right in. It went really well. My wife found her place in that company as well. She actually still works for that company. So after it was situated, my deal was to come get it going and see what else was going to happen. I fell in love with Tampa. I had been familiar with this market. I had opened a restaurant many, many, many years ago here through that corporate company, which
What was it called?
It was Prime Bar. Prime Bar.
Isn't that
Prime
still,
Bar?
Isn't that still open?
I don't think so.
No. But I remember it was a big. It was big time though.
Yeah, it hit pretty big.
Yeah,
it was
it
very
did.
busy
I
at the
mean,
time. It was up in what was that neighborhood?
Was it Hyde Park?
No, it was
Wesley Chapel.
Wesley Chapel. There you
I
go.
know where it was now. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
in Wiregrass Mall.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. That used to be a popping place
It
for a
was.
while, man.
Yeah, they had a lot of fun. There was very young clientele.
Mhm.
You know, they did a great job, and so had a relationship that I kind of continued to have as a friend, and
cool.
and then we ended up working together. I got him going. Shortly after that, I started to look around to see what else would keep me in Tampa, and came across a crew of two guys that just bought a restaurant, had never been in the restaurant business.
Oh,
And we crossed paths, and sure enough, they brought me on, and we established Haiku as one of the top Japanese restaurants.
Shit, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean,
Holy cow.
shortly after that, we opened Eden nightclub, and I was with them for about 3.5 years. I think with me, I have to always be challenged. I always have to be growing. I think it comes from my upbringing of opening restaurants and getting that rush of establishing something and putting together amazing teams and seeing it through success. That I started to look, and sure enough, St Pete Distillery. I had a relationship with them. I'd used them for a couple of special dinners, and fell in love with their product. Their product has a lot of intent. They're not shy about flavor. Neither am I. And I felt like every time I'd visit the distillery, everybody was willing to pitch in to make anything happen. And I love that attitude. And it really brought me in, and I kept a solid relationship with them. And then when this opportunity came up, they looked at me and I looked at them, and we're like, are we going to do this? And sure enough, I jumped in, and it's been just 2 months now that I've been with them, and I've certainly
Oh wow, this is recent.
yeah, very recent. I mean, I was with Haiku through the Tampa Bay Wine and Food Festival, where we won best sushi in Tampa for the second year in a row. And I wanted to see him through that, and start the next segment.
All right, cool. And we get back with Chef David Reyes. We'll continue our story. I'm learning a lot about food and cuisines and everything. So we'll be right back. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, Holidazers, and tuning in. YouTube, Spotify, check us out. Thank you. All right, and we're back to Happy Hour Holidaze with Chef David
That shit
Reyes
is
over
good,
here, who
dude.
brought some really good
It's smooth.
agave.
Agave
smooth.
spirit, yeah.
Super agave.
It's super añejo.
Añejo. Oh, okay.
Which I love that. I mean, usually my drink of choice is, Don Julio. Is it añejo?
Clase Azul.
Yeah, no, not that one. The other one. But I would love that.
Hey, when you do put it up, like face it that way so that camera can see
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Damn, it's good, man. I mean, I like tequila.
I do too.
Who doesn't
And,
like tequila?
And I gotta tell you, that's some of the smoothest tequila I've ever had.
It's the flavor
Where can people buy it?
at the St Pete Distillery.
Okay.
It's branded with St. Pete on there too.
Yeah,
it's
it's available at our tasting room. It's also available in it doubles as a retail space, so they can go to the St. Pete Distillery, pick up a bottle.
Has St. Pete Distillery tried to distribute it to other?
Yeah, they work with a distributor called RNDC,
Okay.
and I'm not sure what stores it may be at. I'll get that information to you, but it's very new and it's very limited. As of an email I got this morning, there's like 50 cases left, which isn't a lot.
Wow.
So it's been going pretty quickly.
12 bottles a case, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
6 bottles. a case.
6.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So even less.
Even
There's only 300 bottles left. That's it.
Basically, they are making. There's
I
another
can
batch.
see why.
There's another batch in the works. So hopefully that'll be out sometime soon, because I think this one's going to sell out pretty quickly.
So, what were we talking about off air that we wanted to get on the podcast?
It was about another restaurant. No,
So
yeah,
it's an interesting.
we were talking about Michelin star.
Michelin stars that are pretty
transitioned,
pretty new to this area of the world. The Michelin system has been in place for a long, long time, and it's really only existed in Europe for most of its life, and then opened its borders and to go beyond Europe to Asia, and now the U.S.
And they were mostly in the Northeast. I mean, they didn't really come down to the Southeast until like a couple of years ago.
Right. They started in New York and California, and then Chicago to basically cover the meccas of food in the U.S.
And even Miami, I think, but never Tampa, never Orlando.
No.
And then they came down like 2 years ago or
Correct.
last year.
2 years
and
ago.
then there's Orlando has, I think, 2, and then Tampa has 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. I mean, it's only a handful of starred restaurants.
In Central Florida, yeah.
The interesting thing about this, I was having a conversation with someone who has a prominent restaurant here in Tampa, and having experience in Michelin-starred kitchens and staging in super high-end kitchens in Chicago, even being in 3-star kitchens for a short time, it's a daunting task to put together an amazing team with a single mindset that delivers an experience to a plate that has to be given or brought out by another set of team or another team. The front of the house, the servers, the managers.
Right. It's also if someone drops a fork, they come right up, pick it up, give them a brand new fork, place it correctly.
It's so many things hitting on the highest level of execution that it's very difficult to achieve a star. And achieving or having a star doesn't always equal profitability. And that aspect has gotten more and more difficult. A restaurant is still a business. It's always going to be a business. And, there are few restaurants that can survive with a 40-person team in the back of the house, in the kitchen, or a 30-person team. And to keep that level of execution at a very high degree, those are all very big challenges in a basic restaurant, let alone, a Michelin-starred restaurant. So, hats off to the people that achieve stars and keep them and are successful, business models, because I can tell you there's a long list of Michelin-starred restaurants that are now closed. That it doesn't always guarantee profitability or success. You're working yourself, or you're working the team to achieve that goal year after year. Just because you get it once doesn't mean you're going to get it again the next year.
Oh, they have
you have to
renew
keep it. You have to keep it. Yes.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes the Michelin Guide is looking for an excuse to take it away. They're going back again and again, and you never know who they are. It's a team of diners that usually bring in people with them. They're not typically alone, so that they
don't
can
have like
get
a notebook. That doesn't give it away?
They do, it's kind of hidden, and they try to make it difficult to spot them. And they usually bring a group of people with them so they can see and taste a lot of different things, and it's a heavily guarded system. But yeah, I mean, keeping a Michelin star is as difficult as getting one, So the challenge is making that show possible. And the show, meaning the front, the back, the bar, the wine, everything hitting on all cylinders, and it's less reliant on the setting, but the setting does help. A beautiful restaurant is a little more likely to achieve a star. I always love this example of there was a restaurant in Chicago called Schwa. Love the restaurant. And they achieved a Michelin star. They didn't even have wine.
Oh, wow.
They didn't even have beer. It was just amazing food in a small room, like maybe 8 tables. And when I went there for the first time, they were blaring underground hip hop. I mean, it was loud, right? And I loved it, right? I'm sitting there with my date, and we're going through it.
That's not what you expect from a Michelin star restaurant.
No. It's the kitchen crew serves, right? So one of the kitchen crew comes out, delivers water, talks us through the menu. we're excited. There's another couple. It's a tight restaurant, so there's another couple right next to us, and a much older gentleman. And somewhere through the first few courses, he goes to the cook that's serving. He's like, "Hey, can you turn on the music?" And the cook, without missing a beat, says, "Oh, that's not for you. It's for us." I'm like, I like this place. I want to do something like this, So it's a good example of, when a restaurant just excels at one of those things, and, Michelin recognizes it. It had amazing food. The chef had an amazing background, amazing backstory. So the thing was, if you were in the know, you would bring them something to drink. A 6-pack of beer. Yeah, the kitchen crew, a 6-pack of beer, bottle of booze, So that was it was kind of this underground thing. As a fellow chef or a fellow cook, you'd kind of bring something in for them, And the funny thing was, if they knew you were a culinary student, they'd charge you like next to nothing.
Really?
Yeah, they were really good people, man. That's. I wonder if it's still open, but it to me was one of the quintessential restaurants in Chicago. No, not at all. I mean, you'd walk out of there paying maybe $200 for a 5, 6, 7 course meal. And, it was in the middle of the hood, man. There was a rim shop across the street. You can buy speakers next to that.
A gun store, a liquor store.
Liquor store, yes, definitely. So, it kind of bucked the system, and that's, I think, one of the things I loved about it. And it was all about, the experience almost for the cook. Yeah. And for the cook, a good cook just loves to take care of people. I wrote an essay for a scholarship going into culinary school. And the question was, why do you want to go to culinary school? And my answer, without hesitation, was, I want to recreate the experience of going to my grandmother's house to eat. Because when I went there, I sat down, and you never got up. You never needed anything. You left the table thinking, well, that couldn't have been better. If you got up to get yourself something, my grandmother would be like, whoa, what are you doing? I can get it for you. Yeah. And she had a very kind of old Spanish style way of serving, where everything was an individual dish, I'd get up and need to go to the bathroom, and grandma's like, why are you getting up? What do you need? I'm like, I've got to go to the bathroom,
So you can't help me with that one.
It was.
You can wipe for me.
It was a selfless approach to service and food that I wanted to recreate for people, and to impart the notion that nothing's missing. And if you think about a great experience in a restaurant, you walk away with that feeling. Yeah. You couldn't have had anything better, right? And the only thing that was in your hands was the company you were with, right? So needless to say, I got that scholarship, and, off went, the start of my culinary career.
And I think before I interrupted you, you were telling a story about how you were talking to somebody who's prominent in Tampa. What was that story going to be?
He already did.
We did that. It was basically about how Michelin-starred restaurants aren't necessarily profitable. And that profitability can be hard to achieve when
you're Michelin star. Can't you just basically, and I don't want to say charge any price you want, but can't you really, in order to overcome the expenses or the expenditures of that restaurant in order to become profitable? Or is that just taxing the customer for that star, and then maybe the customer is like, well, I don't know.
You have to make it relative to the expectation. A great example, Alinea in Chicago charges upwards of, I think, $400 or $500, $350 is where their starting point is, I think. If not, it might be a little bit less for a tasting menu there. They have a few different levels of experiences. Their highest one, I think, is like $400 or $500 a person. What you don't know is that it takes about 30 people to deliver this, working together on time with the people delivering the food, and everybody's training is, to a very high degree. It makes sense, Then there's other restaurants that, might put a few pieces of food in front of you and say, hey, that's, $500. Wow. That's not going to last. I think people, especially, going into an economy where it's not as much, surplus of money and stuff are very conscious of that. and you can only get away with it for so long. So, that's another challenge to, being a Michelin starred restaurant is you have to keep that high degree of execution and the perceived value of shelling out $500-600 a person. It has to be a curated experience through and through from the moment you walk in the door to the moment you leave. I mean, even the valet gets evaluated in a Michelin starred restaurant. Yeah.
So we're talking about, it's not only just about the food, it's about the entirety of the experience.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And that's why I think the Michelin star system carries a lot of weight. It's not BS, that you can't buy it. There's other awards in the culinary world that you can basically shell out enough money and you might be able to get it, right? Not going to mention any names.
The James Beard?
You said it, I didn't.
Because on a lot of these cooking shows, and how about let's transition to a question like that. A lot of these cooking shows, I see a lot of the chefs are James Beard Award winners and blah, 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 all this.
By the way, that's a great way of not winning a James Beard Award, is saying what I just said. But
well, you didn't say it. I said it.
You said it.
I said it. So, I mean, have you ever thought about maybe competing in, Chopped or Beat Bobby Flay or Iron Chef or something like that, just to build your overall reputation amongst? And I don't know if a lot of people want to do this that are chefs, like become famous chefs,
right?
Like a Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, I was a big fan of those shows growing up in the culinary world. Then I fell out of love with them because they basically gave young cooks the wrong idea. That you're going to start cooking and become famous or a rock star or whatever it is. The other thing is that you needed time, right? And I've been so busy kind of putting my head down, getting to work, being dedicated to what I'm doing to carve out 2-3 months of my career to go do a show, and I'm not saying I wouldn't do it now. But it'd have to be, there's some shows that are just ridiculous. Like
Guy's Grocery Games?
That one, yeah. Well, and Guy Fieri, by all means.
He's hilarious.
I had the opportunity to work with him at the South Beach Food and Wine Festival. What a fucking great guy.
Yeah. He seems natural on TV. Like he's not forcing it.
Right. And, I was on the team that prepared his demo. And after the demo was done, it was fucking crazy demo. He used a cement mixer to make a mudslide for the crowd. And then he used a big ass torch to torch these compressed spaghetti squares covered with cheese and sauce. And he used a big torch to melt the cheese. It was just like,
he's a showman.
He's a showman, right? And the stuff tasted good because I made it. But after the show, he got the crew together, and he said to me, he's like, I want to take a picture with the crew. And I'm like, great. Let's get them together. We got on the stage. He made a speech. I think I posted it online, saying that you don't win championships unless you have every member of the team 100% in. I don't do what I do without you, and it was a very humble speech that resonated with everybody there. And it's something he didn't have to do. There were no cameras rolling. I had my phone like this, like he didn't know I was recording. And, that was a really telling moment. Didn't have to happen. Didn't have to say that. But he did, and
essentially the most successful chefs are those that lead. Right?
Correct. I say this
They're
a lot.
They're like the head coach of the kitchen.
Absolutely. You got to think of it that way because, I've said this a lot more in the last couple years of my career. I'm more proud, more than any menu I've ever put together, more than any concept that I've ever put together. I'm proudest of the teams that I put together. And culture in the restaurant business is the most essential commodity you can kind of curate, because it's going to be the determining factor, whether or not you have turnover, whether or not you have attrition throughout the years. It's going to bring the whole team. Often there's a divide between the front and the back, and one thinks the other one doesn't work hard enough or whatever. That should never exist in a restaurant. You're all on the same team. Cross motivation, finding common goals should be a practice that restaurants have that often don't. it's often referred to as one of the most culture isn't at the utmost importance of a lot of restaurants. It's just getting through it, right? And it's a grind. It's a trade. Don't ever take that for granted. It is a trade. It's a hands-on trade, and it does involve some art form to it, but it's a business, right? And it will never stop being a business.
I do hear that around 95% of new restaurants fail within the first year because they maybe lack that culture that you're talking about. Is that something you've heard before? Or?
Oh, I think the statistic's closer to 50% for the first year and 80% don't make it to year 5.
Okay, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it from you.
Well, I mean,
you're the expert.
If I look around, when we opened Haiku almost 4 years ago, there was a lot of restaurants that just opened right after COVID, and they're not here anymore. I mean, even restaurants across the street didn't make it. It's a very difficult industry. It's very volatile. It's often the reason banks don't fund restaurants unless they're already established. A lot of restaurants are self-funded, small business that, oddly enough, employ a ton of people and, prop up communities, whether they're chains or not. They're still employing local people, so it's just a very difficult business. And, I've been lucky enough to thrive in it, learn from it, put it to use. This is a badge of honor for me, looking back at one of the first restaurants I was a chef in, to see that most of the cooks went on to be chefs themselves, and some of them have their own restaurants. I'm very proud of that, more than any menu I've ever put together. And I know the people that showed me the way are proud of what I'm doing. So you got to keep that going.
I like it, man. That's fantastic. I mean, that's somebody who takes pride in what they're doing. You're not working. You're living a dream.
I am.
You are?
I am.
Thank you for continuing to watch Happy Hour Holidaze. We'll be right back with Chef David Reyes. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, Instagram, social media. Check out our Friday features. We'll be right back. And we're back to Happy Hour Holidaze. Holidazers, thank you for tuning in and watching our show. We're here with Chef David Reyes, who's put a staple in Tampa now with all the different restaurants that you've been a part of. And I had one question for you. I mean, being a chef and being, throughout the entire world, experiencing so many different restaurants and dishes, what is the most expensive dish
or meal
Yeah.
that you have ever eaten or been a part of?
Okay, so at the height of our success at our restaurant in Chicago, my wife and I took my little sister. I hooked up with a friend from back in grade school that was working in New York, and brought them all to dinner at a epic restaurant in New York called Per Se, and we took their last lunch reservation. And it was 4 of us. And we did the tasting. It was, I think, 7 courses. And, the first 2 were amazing. The middle one came out. It was a pasta dish. And someone came out with a box of truffles, black truffles, and started shaving over the pasta. And I had my phone out. And I'm recording this, and he's going. He's like,
and truffles are expensive, right?
That's a lot. I mean, thinking to myself, that's a lot of truffle. That's amazing. And he goes, "You really like truffle?" I'm like, "Oh my God, stop. I didn't know I was supposed to say stop." I'm like, all right, cool. So, I'm like, I took a little bit, I put on my sister's plate, I put some on my wife's plate. I'm like, you guys have some truffle too. And no, he went around the table, and we had an amazing meal. And then they brought us into the kitchen. We had a course in the kitchen.
Oh.
We had a tour of the restaurant. Then they brought us to this room that overlooks Central Park. It was amazing. And then they brought out chocolate truffles, like the little individually made chocolates, and then there was like a 2-course dessert at the table. And this was like a 4-hour meal, right? And I get the bill And the bill was like,
Can we take a guess?
go ahead.
All right, you guess first.
All right, let me think. I would say probably for 4, right?
Yeah, this was
This is
6
for
years
everybody.
ago.
This is for everybody, though,
Yeah.
right?
6 years ago.
I'm gonna say probably about $3,500.
$3,800.
Damn.
And they
On
go,
the
because they knew I was a
nose.
chef, because it came out in the conversation. They're like, chef, don't worry, the tip is included. I'm like, thank goodness. Let me just round this out to $4,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the most expensive. It was amazing. It was a great meal.
Was it because of the truffles?
It was the truffles made up about $500 of it.
So
The shaved truffles around the table.
And
yeah.
truffles, if you could explain it to the audience, because it's something that's very rare
Yeah.
and you can't really find in a lot of places. It's actually just one part of the world that you find it from?
Well,
or
the
is that-
best truffles are found in southern France, northern Italy. They grow on the roots of oak trees.
And it's fungus, right?
It's a mushroom.
A mushroom.
Yeah. And the only way to find them are using dogs or pigs.
Oh.
Pigs have a very sensitive sense of smell. And the problem with the pigs, I think they have a better sense of smell, but they like to eat the truffle. The dogs can just find them.
Yeah.
So they only grow a certain time of year, the best ones. There's truffles growing in Washington State. They're not nearly as good. So when we talk about how rare they are, they're extremely rare. They have to be found by hand. They're usually about $1,000 a pound. And I often think back to my first experience with real truffle, and that was in the first student exchange with a French school when I was a student. And I go to the local market, and it was truffle season. And, somebody said, you have to smell these truffles. I'm like, okay, I've never smelt an actual truffle before. I take the box, I open the box, I sniff. It smelled like kerosene. It smelled like gas, and I'm like, wow, that's pungent. Like, later on in that same exchange, I had a dinner with shaved truffle on it, and the flavor was undescribable. I mean, real truffle is hard to top, truffle oil. Oof, I try not to use it. But it's hard to avoid it when you want truffle flavor, but you don't want to pay truffle prices. So, yeah, that there have been other experiences that come close, but that was the top per person price. Yeah, that was the top.
Should they have at least told you, hey, you're paying for the truffle per?
I think at that restaurant, they probably just.
It might have been on the menu.
On the menu.
I just said, let's do the tasting.
It's like the Olive Garden where they're like, tell me when.
Cheese piled up. Oh, when.
Oh, damn. It's $1,000 a pound.
Yeah. Typically, it's about $1,000.
I heard recently that the largest truffle nugget was discovered maybe like a year or two ago, and it went for like millions of dollars.
It did. Yeah. That's crazy. It's an ingredient. It's like tuna in Japan. I read about $1 million tuna that's 800 pounds, and I'm thinking to myself, how are you going to make money off that? Like, how much do you have to sell an ounce or a gram of tuna for at that point?
What restaurant is buying it is the real question.
There are restaurants in Japan that definitely would be able to sell that.
No shit.
Yeah, they're just it's a sought after experience, and in Japanese culture, they appreciate the leaner parts of tuna, whereas Americans appreciate the fattier parts of tuna. It's kind of weird, but there's a lot of flavor in fat, so that kind of explains it. We are, I think, widely discovering the magic of Wagyu beef.
Oh my God!
I've certainly done my part at Haiku, bringing in authentic Japanese Wagyu and
uncooked or cooked?
No, just primal cuts, big pieces of Wagyu. And my favorite dish that I created there was it's called Wagyu versus Wagyu, and you can have American Wagyu
or
on Japanese Wagyu right next to each other on a hot rock being seared in front of you. You can cook it as much as you want, and the flavor is so clear that they're different, right? American Wagyu is kind of 50-50 Black Angus and Japanese Wagyu. Wagyu in Japanese is cow. When you say Wagyu beef,
you're basically saying
cow beef.
Yeah,
It's funny. But in America, they crossbreed Black Angus with Wagyu to get a faster product. It's a little not as fatty. It's delicious, but Japanese Wagyu takes, I think, 3-4 years to get to market, whereas Black Angus takes a year, sometimes a little bit more. And in Australia, it's 75% Japanese Wagyu and 25% Black Angus. Australians are very well known for having Black Angus beef as their kind of beef of choice. They've done a great job cultivating it, but they're a little closer to Japanese Wagyu than we are as Americans for many reasons. So the opportunity to kind of showcase both of them side by side was a lot of fun. And you go to tables and you say, hey, what was your favorite? Oh, no, this one, the American one was my favorite. The other one is just too fatty. I'm like, okay, cool. Most tables would like the fatty Japanese Wagyu. So it was fun to kind of educate people, help educate people, and showcase that and bring Wagyu to the forefront and feature it.
And Japanese Wagyu looks more of like a marbleized fat. I've seen it before because I've had it before, and I mean, it just melts in your mouth.
Yeah,
it's in my opinion the best beef I've ever had.
So, and is it like a cow? Is it like a special part of the cow, or is it just like
the entire cow?
Oh, it's the entire cow.
Cultivated to be have a high content fat. Now, Wagyu is classed in A1 through 5. So when you hear A5, that the meat quality is the highest. Okay, it has nothing to do with the fat. There's a marbling score that's like 1 through 12. So something classified as A5 with a marbling score of like 10, you're looking at like almost Snow White, highly fat content or high fat content, and it cuts like butter, tastes, it's
like
just amazing. Yeah, it tastes like butter.
Almost.
So that's the best. A5 marble 10.
A5 with a marbling score of like 9 or better, you're experiencing some of the best beef in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you're talking about like something like very small, and it's probably like $1,000.
No, it doesn't go that high. When we were buying Japanese Wagyu, I tried to buy around $50 a pound to $100 a pound, so I could kind of have perceived value at the plate. It is very filling. Like 2 ounces of Wagyu feel like an 8-ounce steak.
Because of all the fat.
It's all the fat, man. Yeah. And, it coats your mouth and it's delicious and you can only have so much of it and you feel full. So the marbling score is just as important as the meat score. A1 through 5. A4 with a marbling score of like 7, 8, still very delicious. Mm-hmm. Very good. Probably better than, a lot of prime cuts that we consider to be the best here in the U.S.
I'm not a big fan of fillets, though.
You know what? As people mature in their palate, they find out fillets are actually just soft cuts of just bland beef.
Yeah.
I don't know why a lot of people...
it's healthier, right?
It is healthier.
It's not as juicy as a ribeye.
No, obviously.
You can certainly, there's a lot to be said when you can cut a piece of beef with a fork, which a good fillet you should be able to. But if you're looking for flavor, man, there's so many other cuts that are so much better.
Delmonico's?
Delmonico's are great. My favorite cut is a flat iron, but it has to be cut right. Skirt steak, don't get me wrong.
I love skirt steak.
Good skirt steak is, man, it's so good.
Like an Argentinian skirt steak.
Sure. The Argentinians definitely know what to do with steak. The Greeks know what to do with
lamb.
The skirt steak. Mexicans definitely love their skirt steak. It's an underappreciated cut of beef for sure. There's a lot of underappreciated cuts of beef that, if treated right, manipulated a little bit, cut as well as all the expensive cuts.
And Cubans know how to cook a good dog. At least in Cuba. That's why there's no dogs in Cuba.
Jesus.
At least that's what our parents said.
Right.
So I didn't live there.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Chef, I was going to ask you too, when it comes to the megas, like if you had to pick 5 megas in the world for food.
Megas.
Yeah, like the mega foods, like, like you were saying, New York, California.
Yeah.
Meccas.
The meccas, What would be the 5 that you would pick where you'd say, hey, you're going to get good food in these areas?
Yeah.
Or in these cities.
There's another list out there in the culinary world. It's the top 100. It's put out by San Pellegrino. It's very highly regarded, kind of like the Michelin guide. where, you learn about unique experiences on a global scale. It goes where the Michelin Guide doesn't. It appreciates food anywhere. If you look at that list, a lot of restaurants are in Peru right now that are getting a lot of attention. They've never stopped being in Spain. Southeast Asia is getting a lot of attention right now. Australia, Japan will always be a food mecca for me.
Yeah.
And Mexico.
What about China?
China, it does have, I don't know if
I'm
it
just
has
curious,
any
I don't know.
restaurants in that list, but it never ceases to be on the list of top culinary, countries in the world because it has such a huge influence. If you look at cilantro, it came from China.
No shit. I thought it was from Mexico.
It came this way. Tomatoes went that way. Cilantro came this way. Somewhere in the middle, there's a nice salsa, But there's so many ingredients that made its way from China to other parts of the world that are now staples in that country.
So I've heard you name a lot of countries, but there's one that I feel like you've left out that maybe requires a certain taste, and that would be India.
Oof. Don't get me started. That's some great food. You talk about the crossroads of the spice trade, and it's so evident in their food.
Like the curry?
Curries can be amazing. And the food from the north differentiates to the south, differentiates to the east and the west. And, much like Mexico often gets clumped up into one Indian food, but it's so diverse, and one of my favorite restaurants in Chicago is this place called Tiffin. And they do an English style service, but with very authentic Indian food. And I was so educated. I became educated the more I went, and I asked a lot of questions. And Indian food is absolutely amazing. It also has an influence on the rest of the world. But when you talk about India, you talk about the crossroads of the spice trade that have are very evident in the food in today. And it's grossly underappreciated. I mean, you talk about street food capitals. That's one of them. I think Mexico City is the street food capital of North and South America. There's street food in Southeast Asia is amazing. We just did
Seoul. How about Seoul?
I'm sure Seoul. I don't know enough about Korean food, other than some of the ingredients that have come from there that I love to use. Kimchi. Yeah. There's spices that are very Korean that I love to use.
Their food's definitely got a kick. Korean food, yeah.
Korean food,
Yeah.
South Korean food,
Yeah.
North Korean food. You ain't getting no food from North Korea, bro.
Does it even happen there?
Yeah, I know,
kidding,
right?
kidding to all those North Koreans. But it's one of the funnest parts of being a chef is if you're a curious chef, you'll learn that the history of the world often mimics the history of food or vice versa, and my wife is like a walking encyclopedia of the history of food. And we'll be at dinner. And if I don't know something, I'll ask her. And she fucking goes on this 10-minute, just, talk about this and that. And, the Moors brought it to there and then it transformed into this. And I'm like, that's amazing. I love that she's so educated.
What we don't hear a lot about is just African food in general. I'm not talking about South Africa. I'm talking about the heart of Africa.
Right.
There's really not, or maybe I'm wrong here, but there's really not too many culinary inspirations from Central Africa or North Africa, with the exception of maybe Egypt and Morocco and things like that. I mean, can you shed some insight for the audience about Central African food?
Speaking of diversity, it's extremely diverse. It's funny. I have a show that we do with Tasty Tampa called Best Bites of the Bay. And I go around looking for unique bites in different restaurants, and each episode has a theme. And the next episode we're going to film is Africa and the different African restaurants in Tampa. And I found a unique guest to do this with. He was an ex-Bucks player from Africa, African descent, like born in Africa and came here to study, went to college, got drafted, played for the Bucks for a few years, and he stayed here. And we're going to do an episode where he takes me to his favorite African food destinations. And so I'm looking to get a little more educated in African cuisine. In Chicago, we have a few Ethiopian restaurants that when you ask a taxi driver for the best restaurants that he would go to, not the best restaurants that he recommends, the ones he goes to, you end up getting some unique recommendations. And I got recommended to this restaurant. It was Ethiopian food. And
can you tell us what the restaurant?
I can't remember the name of it, but it was fucking spicy.
That's what I like. That's what I like.
But it was a different, just a different spice level. It was just very unique. And you eat a lot with your hands, which I always love, I love eating with my hands. I mean, some of the best food around the world is eating with your hands. I get down with a tortilla or a flatbread or a naan or anything.
Naans are good, man.
I just can scoop up with the best of them. I look like it's a second nature for me to scoop up food with my hands. I'm not shy about it. But I think African food is one of those up and coming things on a global scale, much like Peruvian food was in the last 10 years and Mexican food was for the last 20 years, where it's going to leave its mark on even fine dining. Those ingredients are getting more and more well known.
Yeah. And, that's great information right there. And when we get back with Happy Hour Holidaze, we'll ask Chef, what, as far as the state of Tampa in restaurants, how much have we grown? How far have we came? We'll be right back. All right, we're back to Happy Hour Holidaze with Chef David Reyes here. And we were kind of talking about the state of Tampa, basically the scene of restaurants in Tampa, and what would be some of the great restaurants that you would recommend that might not be something that everybody knows about. We're talking about restaurants that, like myself, I go out on dates with my wife and I'm trying to find somewhere that isn't like a mainstream restaurant that everybody would know about, but I want something special. I mean, what would you say some of those are, Chef?
I think, first of all, I mean, it might go without saying that Tampa culinarily is exploding.
Yeah.
It's been fun to be a part of it, but also fun to witness. Because I only have 1 degree in culinary, but I have many degrees in eating. I'm as a professional eater.
I'm good. I'm on that one too.
Many stripes, having eaten many meals.
You'd be a general in eating.
I'd be a fucking general in the eating army. So it's been fun to witness that, having come from Chicago, and I would go to New York religiously to just visit new restaurants and old restaurants and eat.
That's big coming from you, Chef, because you've only been here for 4 years now in Tampa. So for you to say that it's exploding in such a short period of time of being here, it makes me proud of my city.
Yeah, and you should. I mean, it already had great staples. It already had an amazing food scene. It's being elevated to a different degree, and there's a lot of chefs that are really bringing it, and it's fun to create a camaraderie with them. I come from a city that chefs support each other. There was no competition. It's sharing guests, it's sharing experiences and becoming better through it. And, I'm seeing that now in Tampa and having fun getting to know some of the other chefs through events like the Tampa Bay Wine Food Festival and other charity events throughout the city. Some of my favorite restaurants, Pont, Rooster and Till, Supernatural Foods. If you haven't been there, they're fucking donuts in the morning. They always run out.
No way.
They're so good. And he makes it's so simple, but so well executed that, I love going there. I used to love going there for lunch because it's right around the corner from Haiku.
Can you tell me the location for Ponds?
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking up right now. It's called, it's spelled Ponte, Modern American.
Yeah.
And where's this at?
It's in
Chef?
Midtown.
Midtown.
Yeah, it's in Midtown.
Yeah,
So
Midtown.
that one was in Midtown.
It's closed right now.
No, it's not. Well, it's
right now.
Right now, it's closed.
Yeah. And
Rooster
when I
and
say
Till-
closed, I just mean hour of the day.
Yeah,
hour
Rooster
of the
and
day.
Till, Seminole Heights.
Yeah.
And then the third one that you had been.
Supernatural Foods.
Yeah, Supernatural Foods.
I love the guy.
I've never heard of that one.
Where's that one located?
That one is downtown. Right. What is it? Franklin and. What is it? Tampa? No, not
Supernatural.
Franklin and near Cass.
All right, yeah. General
right
area
downtown.
is always good.
So, there are so many other restaurants. There's another one that does dumplings and
Asian dumplings.
and it's out.
What is that one called?
Tiger something. I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering their name, and shout out to them because they're one of my favorite stops. All they do is dumplings, and some of my favorite things in the world are dumplings.
Yeah, mine too.
Between Asian dumplings, empanadas, anything that's bread or dough with something inside that's delicious. Sign me up, man. So there are so many new restaurants that are coming into the food scene that are kind of bringing another level and then another level and then another level. And it's making some of the other restaurants kind of, step their game up. And, it's always a challenging
Lucky
thing. Lucky Tiger. That's it.
Tiger spelled Tigre.
Yeah. It's
that one's in downtown.
I had
as well.
Another chef take me to that one. And man, ever since then, I love going there.
It's a Filipino restaurant and it is located. Yeah. Fuck, man.
Downtown Tampa, general area?
No, it's
off of Howard.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
So it's fun to witness all this because I love eating. I think when people ask me what I miss about Chicago the most, it's being able to get noodles at 2 a.m. and being really good.
Yeah.
Or being able to get tacos at 3 a.m.
And being really good.
And being really good. I do miss that, but it's Tampa is exploding. It's making its mark on a national scale. The Cuban culture here is super strong. The cigar culture is super strong. It's becoming well known. That Food and Wine Festival I keep referring to is a big deal. To put Tampa on the map on a national scale was a lot of fun. It's very well organized. It brings chefs together. I don't think it realizes how important it is because I've now met more chefs through that event than I have just going around town.
Where's that event at, by the way? Is it in Busch Gardens?
No, they have their own festival.
Oh.
But this one is right downtown at Curtis Hickson Park.
Oh, okay.
They have a chef showdown that happens. That's a lot of fun. And then the next day is a grand tasting, usually on a Saturday, middle of the day. And you get to meet a lot of chefs and, taste their food. But it's important for events like that to bring a community together, not only for the public, but for the community itself, and it's been a lot of fun to be a part of that. And now going into St. Pete, getting to know chefs in St. Pete and Clearwater, you realize that there's more beyond Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
One of my favorite restaurants in St. Pete is Alelo. Alelo, if you haven't been, is surprisingly just so good. It's tiny inside.
Yeah.
They have a huge patio, and I've been there about 5 times, and I haven't had a bad meal yet. And if the food scene in St. Pete keeps growing the way it is, that's going to be good.
Do you know how to spell it?
Allelo, I think.
Yeah, no, St. Pete is booming within itself, and so is that downtown, St. Pete area.
Yeah.
I've partied a million times down there First Friday. I can't believe they did that. They don't do that anymore, huh?
Listen, and it doesn't have to happen because it kind of just
automatically happens, right?
Keeps going. It's still a lot of fun to go down there on any given night of the week, really, in that little area that had all those, bars.
Yeah.
It's unassuming. Like it doesn't make a lot of noise on, a regional scale, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh,
and, I went so far as I bought.
Taking my wife to a lot of these.
Yeah,
she's gonna be
definitely
blown
go
away.
to Alelo. It's really good.
It's Allelo.
Right.
For the audience out there.
I bought my house in St. Pete, just north of downtown. I'm a huge baseball fan.
Oh, yeah?
So don't tell my wife.
So go Rays?
So I've adopted the Rays as my second favorite.
Go Chicago.
I'm a Cubs fan.
I'm a Cubs fan. I knew it was going to be the Cubs.
You know who won the World Series for the Cubs? Tampa Bay Rays coach, man, John Madden.
Not only that, but Chris Bryant. Not Chris Bryant. He played. He was a utility player. He played for the Rays for many, many years. I just bought a signed ball by him.
I know exactly who you're talking about. He had blonde hair.
Yeah, and then he went to Kansas City, won a championship there, and then he came to Chicago.
We're talking about a while ago.
I'm blanking.
Dude, so am I.
I bought a baseball signed by him at Wrigley when I was there a couple weeks ago, And I'm like trying to collect all the 2016 players' sign balls.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need that. And
Yeah, that's the only sport I don't watch that often. You
Really?
know, if you tell me anything else, I'm usually really good. But baseball's the
Baseball,
only one I haven't
A little
really.
bit tough.
it was my first love. Growing up in Chicago, the Cubs were really smart. They sponsored my little league baseball team.
Oh.
So in the league, right, in Hummel Park, they had like I was on the A's.
Yeah.
But there was no Cubs, there was no Sox because they didn't want people like the kids fighting over
Yeah,
the Cubs and the
yeah,
Sox.
yeah.
But the Cubs sponsored, everybody had a Cubs logo on their shirts, right? Because they sponsored Little League. And
Yeah.
I think they even sponsored my gym class uniforms in Catholic school. Like they
Jeez.
were smart about the indoctrination of kids in the neighborhood,
I like
right?
the terminology,
So
man.
I, in grade school, every game, like 80% of the games were at 120
Yeah.
because it's Wrigley Field is in a neighborhood and they avoid trying to create more traffic when there's already traffic. So most games, and they only permitted them to have like certain amount of night games, right? So most games are at 120. And I got out of school at 2:30. So my friends and I would ride our bikes to Wrigley Field, about a mile and a half away. And if the grounds crew left a door open in the right
You
field,
get in for free.
no, you could see most of
Oh.
the field. Like you could see like about 2/3 of the field. And, the shortest one would go here, and then the next one, the next one. It was like a little, a stack of
stadium seating almost.
kids. We would just sit there and watch part of the game. And then we learned that if after the 8th inning, they stopped checking tickets. So we would leave our bikes outside. And this was like early 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
We'd run in and, watch the last few innings of baseball. So to say the least, I was a Cubs fan through and through. I think I was like 6 or 7 before I realized there was another team in the city.
I know. That's what I was
Oh,
thinking.
shit.
How does that happen
'Cause
with
you have the
with
Chicago White
Chicago?
Sox
Like
and the Cubs.
who picks Chicago White Sox and who picks the
I
Cubs?
think you're just born into these things,
Yeah,
or,
you just
or
wa-
it's whoever becomes on your radar first.
Which I think
you know,
everybody
Did
in
they have a
Chicago
different
loves the
stadium?
Cubs.
Did they have a different
Oh yeah,
stadium?
yeah. They're
Oh, that's
one's on the
probably
south
why.
side, one's on the north side.
So whichever one you live closer to, I'm assuming.
One's a lot more fun than the other. One has better fans than the other.
That was crazy, huh? During the Sammy Sosa time when they were. That must have been a crazy
one
time.
of the highlights of my young baseball
Cork
life
bat.
was that was going in. I think it was one of those times where I walked in after the 8th and literally like went behind home plate and I grabbed the first seat I can find because they weren't as strict back then.
Yeah.
And I watched Sammy Sosa belt a home run to left field. So the funny thing is, I never rooted against the Sox, and I often tell people this, and they're like, bullshit. No, in 2005, it was last year culinary school, and I bought a ticket to the second home game of the World Series where the White Sox were playing the Astros.
Oh, no shit.
And the seats I sat in, it was the last row of the last section in left field. They don't exist anymore because they were too dangerous to sit in.
Oh my god!
It like I literally was like, just a few seats from the end of the last section all the way up in they were talk about nosebleed seats. I think I paid like $60 for them. I wanted to witness a World Series because I figured growing up this long
Will never
and
happen again.
it'll never happen again because I'm a Cubs fan. So I got to go. I bought a Sox hat. I still have it.
It's
the only Sox hat.
traitor.
The only Sox hat I have. So I've since always rooted for the Sox unless they're playing the Cubs. They're in opposite leagues. So it really, I don't understand this hatred in the city, right? I think if the Sox went to the World Series again, I'd root for them through and through. Might even buy another hat. But, to say the least, I grew up as a Cubs fan and I follow them. And they're coming to the Trop next week. So I'll be there all 3 games. But to be in a city that has embraced baseball and that has a really good team, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. One of my favorite things in professional sports is when the smallest payroll beats the biggest payroll in baseball.
When does that happen?
When the Rays beat the Yankees,
yeah.
I
but not
fucking
in the
love it.
world.
Yeah, I know.
But-
That's true.
Fuck,
It's
bro.
because you put sometimes 5-6 times more money into
Yeah,
a team.
It's
It's
that
Moneyball.
comes-
It's Moneyball. Did you watch that movie? Moneyball.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah, I love that
great.
movie.
Oakland A's went 20 game win streak.
Yep.
And then the Rays, I think last season ago went
Yeah.
13 straight.
To start the
Yeah.
the season. I think
Yeah,
they went
yeah.
like 20-5 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's just fun to witness good baseball. And when I go, man, I've already been to like
Did you see the
6
new
Rays
stadium
games.
they're beating or building? It's like
there's-
1.4 billion, and it's got. Have you seen it?
I'm
The
quietly,
renderings?
yes, and
Yeah.
I'm quietly rooting for the Rays to stay in St. Pete because I
I
bought a house
want
there.
them to come over
I
here,
know.
bro.
It
But it's
makes
already
more sense.
it's already been decided. They're staying in St. Pete.
Selfishly,
They should be called the St. Pete Rays. They shouldn't be called the Tampa
They
Bay
tried
Rays.
to, but
It
they
is-
wouldn't do it. I
it
mean,
is- they
Tampa
should.
Bay.
Tampa
Tampa
Bay,
Bay
right.
is
yeah,
putting St. Pete in there, but
because
if,
this is Tampa, right?
yeah,
and that's Tampa Bay.
I
What?
get it, but I'm like, man,
it's more marketable to have Tampa
have you
Bay.
ever driven down 275 during a Rays game at fucking 4:00, bro? It's all jammed up. It's all jammed up. It fucking sucks, man.
Yeah, the news. Well, the secret is taking 4th Street south.
4th Street South.
Yeah, just get off anywhere before the traffic
Well,
jam.
I'm thinking,
and
you
then
know,
take 4th Street south.
honestly, or take Gandy and then take MLK all the way down 9th Street.
Same.
Yeah.
MLK 4th Street,
Yeah.
and then
You
it'll
end
get
up-
you down to that area.
because
a lot
everybody's
faster.
on the interstate.
Right.
So we got 5 minutes left here. I have to ask this question. You
Sure.
know, being a Michelin trained chef and going to culinary school, what's your favorite fast food, man?
Oh man, you know what? Okay,
And it's got to
This
have a
is-
drive through. It's
This
got to
is
have a
gonna-
drive through.
Okay, this is gonna sound broad fast food, like things you can find in different states.
Yeah,
Culver's.
Culver's is
Really?
awesome.
When they're on their
Culver's
game
is
and they're
awesome,
making
man.
fresh burgers, because I've
Hell
been to a
yeah.
Culver's drive-through when I've gotten a burger and I know this shit's been sitting around for a bit. When they put out a fresh burger, they do a smash burger. So it's a nice heavy sear on a 2.5 ounce patty, whatever. That is hard to beat, but the only reason it's not my top is because there's not
Culver's
one
is-
around here. It's a In-N-Out burger. Have you ever been to an In-N-Out?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have in
yeah.
Arizona,
Yeah, bro.
That is a good burger.
and they're greasy.
but they're French fries. Ugh.
Fuck the fries. No. Yeah, but we're talking it's probably the best mass-produced burger out there.
What about Steak and Shake?
I think they used to be a little higher on my list.
But now they dropped
I haven't
down.
been to a Steak and Shake that's really impressed me. I mean, there was one, where in West Chicago near my parents' home, and I used to go there all the time. It was delicious. It kind of reminds me of what I get out of Culver's now.
Culver's
But
is
yeah,
really good.
that's
They're
okay. Wait,
Wisconsin cheese bites.
favorite guilty pleasure
Okay.
cheese fries. It has to have that fake ass cheese
The-
with
the-
a
the
little bit
cheddar,
of
yeah,
jalapeno flavor.
yeah, yeah.
Man, when I go to baseball games, if I can find nachos with that horrible cheese, I'll go to town on that.
Can there be a good hot dog?
Nah, you
I'm
can't
from
fuck-
Chicago.
Yeah.
That's hot dogs are
Does it have to be a
a
chili
religion.
dog? I mean,
I
No.
just went to Joey D's in
Joey D's.
Sarasota, and they put out some of the best. I mean, the Chicago style pizza was pretty solid,
yeah.
not greasy, good bread, and
Their
their
deep
hot
dish,
dog was
right?
it was
So
good.
the best deep dish I found in Tampa Bay is at Paul's Chicago Pizza in Clearwater. They do the best deep dish. Cappy's is not bad. Paul's is, I think, a little bit better, more authentic. It's hard to get deep dish done without the right oven. And Paul's
Doesn't
Chicago,
it have to be just a Brickstone?
it has to be a deck oven. And the best ones are a rotating deck oven that kind of puts heat around the pizza as it goes around. It has a really hot shelf that it sits on, and like a carousel. Those are the best ovens for deep dish, man. If you go to any good Chicago deep dish place, and let's be clear, it's very controversial what I'm about to say. Deep dish is a casserole. It's not a pizza. Okay, it's a casserole, and it's just delicious, right? Say what you want to say, but
Comes in a black pan.
it does typically come in. It's cooked in a like a
Cast
metal
iron,
pan, cast
cast
iron,
iron black
or
pan.
just stainless, pan, and it has to form a nice buttery crust. The middle is what's up for debate, but usually it's cheese and then the sauce on top, and then the ingredients. Some put the ingredients in with the cheese. It doesn't matter. It has to be baked to a certain degree where the outside is nice, crispy, and the inside is, nice and melty.
that one was good.
So,
You should have the sensation of choking the first time you eat deep dish pizza because that cheese just doesn't seem to detach, and it's stretching, and I'm like, oh my God, am I
I
gonna
can't swallow.
It's often I tell people, did you feel like you were gonna choke? No? Then you probably didn't have good deep dish.
Damn it, I didn't, man, because I didn't feel
so
that.
we got 1 minute left. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with that your final words?
Like I've said before, I think it's fun witnessing the food scene here in Tampa. My mad respect to, the pioneers that were here for a long time, doing their thing, and it's fun to be a part of it. Just culture and the importance it plays in the restaurant industry in this day and age. I often tell people, I'm not going to be able to pay you enough what I think you're worth. You're probably not going to make what you think you're worth. And I think the only thing you can make up for is culture, giving them a sense of place, and, putting together good teams is learning about who's working with you, what their kids' names are, when their birthdays are, what motivates them. Stuff like that is, I think, going to continue to make the difference in the restaurant scene, and making your team a part of your success. That's what I tried to do at Haiku, and, continue to do in St. Pete Distillery.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much, Chef, for being on our show, man. We absolutely enjoyed it. We learned so much. Please,
And we got to go. Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.